Good evening, everyone, and we're delighted to be joined now by John O'Shea, who we obviously had on our podcast earlier on this season to speak about Cobh Ramblers and Treaty United at the Markets Field. It's now the reverse fixture, and time for John to earn his corn again with his insight into the opposition. But we obviously have Cobh Ramblers facing Treaty United at St. Coleman's Park on Saturday evening. John, we're delighted to have you on with us, and thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for having me on
again. We obviously have a big game, a Munster Derby coming up on Saturday evening. You've got the second meeting of Cobh and Treaty. It's a massive game for both sides, and obviously both sides entered the game as well, John, in great form. You've got Cobh coming in off the back of two really good victories, one in another big rivalry with Cork City in the Munster Derby, and then UCD, which was quite unexpected last week considering how well UCD have been going at home throughout the season, and obviously Treaty as well with wins over Bray and Wexford. So it promises to be a game, a very exciting game with both teams full of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say both teams, I'd say the morale will be high, and they're both going in good form. I'd say from a Cobh point of view as well, they're kind of in the last two games, they're probably getting maybe they're kind of getting results that maybe their performances might have merited. In many instances, like the story of the first series of games, in so many games, I'd say the performances were fairly maybe bar the reverse UCD game at home. Cool, they actually played fairly well, in nearly all the games, really. Take Shelburne at the top of the table now, when they a couple of weeks ago, the Cobh won up, and they had a penalty to go 2-0 up just before half time, and Brendan Clark makes a good save on the penalty. If that goes in, who knows? That could have been a totally different game. And then there's several instances, Cabinteely away, they had a good spit on top, and they maybe a lapse in concentration, and they lose 1-0 up in Athlone. Similar, they took the lead up there, and I think they had a good chance. They had maybe a penalty ruled out to possibly have a chance to go 2-0 up, but then they end up losing 2-1. So it was a case the performances were good, but I suppose the frustrating thing over the first series of games really was that I suppose the results weren't showing. So then they obviously just before the break, then it was the perfect way, I suppose, from the break with the Derby win over Cork City, and I suppose I can't really say enough really, how big a deal, I'd say, for Cobh, how big a deal that was, And it was the first time since '95, I think, in the league that they had beaten Cork City. And you could see how even on social media, or even and right in the ground, you could see how much it meant to the volunteers, and the players were on cloud nine, and the social media. Anyone who would have seen Cobh social media, or say Cork is claret and blue, I'd say they were really that weekend. I'd say they were really, I'd say, in cloud nine for those couple of days over that weekend. So but I think definitely that just gave them that belief. I'd say just to win, I'd say just and obviously they clearly taken into the UCD game, and to go up there. I probably would have. I'd imagine if you offered them a draw, probably before go up to play UCD, they probably would have taken it. But to go up and get all 3 points, and the manner they did as well, it wasn't a smash and grab. It was a real. It was they fully deserved it. I know they went 2 up, and then Colin Whelan gets a penalty back, but I think that was as close as UCD got on the night. So Lee Devitt had a great chance to put Cobh 3-1 up, but so it was definitely a fully deserved win, and maybe they might think now that the morale is good, and they're starting to get the rewards to their performances,
Yeah, definitely, and obviously you mentioned there that the performances in the most part were good from Cobh. Frustratingly, throughout a full round of fixtures, then they felt like maybe the points tally wasn't there for that. But the great thing about the division, John, and the first division is because of how open it is. Coming into this game now, for instance, this is a huge opportunity for Cobh to really stake a claim to going back into the midst of that playoff race, because currently, obviously, they're 8 points behind Treaty, who are in third place. They're not even in 5th position. But if you beat Treaty, you're clawing Treaty back to within 5 points of you, as well as the other teams. Because if you look at it, you've got, UCD and Bray are playing each other on the night as well. Galway and Cabinteely playing each other on the night as well, all the teams around you. So there are going to be losers in those games too, and possibly even all of them if there's draws. So it really would catapult Cobh back into the race for the playoffs, which many people tipped them to be in and around anyway at the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that was definitely the one thing I found even from talking to the, like in the build up to the season as well, like the players and the management. I'm not sure, maybe outside, maybe nationally, maybe would have people, maybe how competitive the division that the teams are in, like Shelburne, like Cork City, Galway, but definitely down in Cobh, like talking to Stuart Ashton and interviewing like some of the players in the lead up to the season, there was a real belief, and there was a real, like I'd say, determination in the camp to have a push for those, at least the playoffs, and if not even, like they were saying, like promotion was the goal, and that I'd say that maybe that, and with the way the league is now as well, that clearly hasn't changed, like and if you get a bit of momentum, it makes a big difference in this league, like 2 or 3 wins, like Cork City even down in ninth at the moment. If they got 2 or 3 wins on the trust, they're catapulted right back into the mix as well. And that's the exciting thing really about the first division, is that, it probably keeps the season alive, maybe heading towards maybe the next couple of months into September.
People wouldn't believe you, John, really, like, would they? Because like you've got a situation where really right now outside of, okay, Shelburne look like they're pulling away. You'd find it hard to back against them to be outright league winners, especially with the quality they have, and the fact that they're beating teams likes of Bray and Galway by 4-1, 4-0. It's really convincing stuff. And then obviously you've got Wexford at the other end, that even though they've had a bit of a bounce in terms of the performances under Ian Ryan, the results haven't really shown that either, though. Like especially in the performance and result against Treaty last week. So really outside of the very last team in the division and the very top team in the division, as you said, even Cork, even though they're not showing great form, everyone still has a chance. That's the great thing about that format with the playoff places for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, without doubt. Like, I think even Cobh, going back to last year as well, like Cobh, they probably started a bit slowly in 2020. I know there was a big delay and all as well, but they ended the season fairly strongly in the latter kind of months of last year, and they had a few big away wins going away to the likes like Galway, like Drogheda, Longford, and they managed to win those places. And like 2 of those teams obviously now are up in the Premier Division, and they look like Drogheda flying in the Premier Division as well. Like, so yeah, it keeps the season alive, having those extra playoff spots, and it's kind of like it's kind of similar like by the championship over in England as well. You could have a team maybe who come like who gets on a real surge of momentum in the latter kind of few months of the season, and this catapults up there, and like you might have a team who might have started well, and then there could be kind of like staggering over the line and kind of getting to the playoffs as well. On the other side of it,
and so you have sorry, John, go on.
So no, yeah, and so definitely I think it's all about momentum, and I think as well there's a good chance maybe for Cobh like Treaty this Saturday, I think, and then I think they're home to Wexford next weekend on the Friday. So if they were to get able to get 6 points out of 6 in those games, like I think you're right, right on the court at least, probably maybe on the court, like just right outside the playoffs, but like you're right back in the mix. So like there's plenty to play for, and like even like from a Treaty perspective as well, like it's
I was just about to say I'm gonna have to try and shut down your optimism for Cobh and put my own 2 pence on it, because even though I mentioned how big an opportunity it is for Cobh, John, on the other side of the coin, it's also a huge opportunity for Treaty, because if you were to beat Cobh, even though it'll only have been 12 games, I believe, to be played in the league, not reaching the halfway point yet, to put 11 points between you and the team in 8th place is massive when you're kind of almost putting those teams down out of their way for a while and putting a gap between you. So that'll be Treaty's point of view as well, I suppose, is that they'll have equally as much opportunity now as Cobh, and maybe a little less pressured as well, obviously, going into this game too.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be and even the fact that the crowd, obviously, I think it's the first game, I think Cobh will have the crowds back as well. So it could be like often. I was in like Turner's Cross last week, the Cork City Cavatelli match, and like you can often see maybe the crowd, obviously, maybe the away team might have the actual maybe the vocal backing of the spectators, but I think just it probably motivates the opposition as well to kind of to feed off it and maybe try to silence the home voices in that sense. But like it would be big, I'd say, for Treaty, and like they're having a magnificent season, from looking at us. Well, you would have seen a lot more than week in, week out than I did, but just the job that Tommy Barrett is doing there is fantastic, and you could see like in terms of the man management and even the players that he's brought in, like they really look like a united camp. And it's even watching clips like away from home. Like I know it was their first away win last week against Wexford, but. Like, yeah, exactly. And but even before, going up to Shelburne, I was watching bits of the Hanley and the LOI service, and they look great that night. And then obviously going away to the UCD as well. That looked like a very entertaining contest as well. So I think that will give them confidence. Obviously going to Shelburne, who look like they're kind of maybe could be pulling away at the top of the table, and to go for Treaty to go there and play as well as they did. It'll probably give them a good confidence to wherever they go in the country, really, that even Coleman's Park Saturday night, that they can go down there and kind of put in a performance and get the result that they need,
Yeah, I'll come to obviously one of your former players that will Cobh Ramblers former players in Charlie Fleming in a minute, but there's another former player first that I'd like to come to, and I suppose ask your opinion on it, because I know you wouldn't have seen, as you said, a lot of Treaty outside of maybe against Cobh or likes, but are you surprised with the feedback and what you've heard? Because obviously Anthony Odonnell received the Player of the Month for the first month with Treaty United, but him and Sean Gearns have formed a really solid partnership at centre back, John. Anthony Odonnell has also scored 3 goals as well. He's been very dangerous in every game nearly from set pieces. From his time with Cobh, are you surprised with the impact that Anthony Odonnell has had at this stage of his career in the League of Ireland First Division?
In short, but no, not really, because I'm not at all surprised really to see how well he's kind of go up there and make an impact, because even obviously with Cobh, like he was down there on the side. I think they got to the playoffs in 2016. Like he was one of their probably stand-up performers, really. Like he was good. He was a reliable operator when he was there. But even in the meantime, in the Munster Senior League, like he was a very good team, Ringmahon Rangers, who would have been pushing and challenging for the title at the top there. And I think they got to the semi-final of the FA Intermediate Cup as well. But even from watching him in the Munster Senior League, I would have seen in the last couple of years when I would have seen him with Ringmahon, there was definitely a sense that he could still do a job at League of Ireland level, and I think that obviously that was kind of evidence really. When I was talking to him in the lead up to the season as well, I was just talking about going back into League of Ireland football. He just did an interview with the Echo down here, and you could see as well he kind of really he had a point to prove, and he was hungry to have another crack off League of Ireland football. And it felt like the right time and the right opportunity, he was kind of saying, and he was looking forward to working with Tommy Barrett again. And I suppose Anto O'Donnell is probably you could name out a number of different players. I'd expect. To be honest, looking at Treaty, and they're kind of in a similar boat as well. They're guys who are coming in from the likes of the Munster Senior Leagues, or I know there's a few guys there from Killarney Celtic as well. Yeah. And I suppose these guys, they're coming in, and I suppose they're used to maybe competing for could be compared to maybe for treating a load of young fellas, maybe from underage level, under 17, under 19, and they might have that first team experience. But you have the likes of guys coming in from Killarney Celtic, and I suppose in Anthony O'Donnell's case, Ringmahon, and they're used to men's football, I suppose, and they're winning and maybe competing at the latter ends of your FAI junior and intermediate cups, and they now they have this opportunity to kind of maybe they've shown that potential maybe in the intermediate junior ranks, and and now Tommy Barrett and Treaty have offered them that chance.
Yeah, again, and obviously as well, John, you have we'll say Charlie Fleming obviously played for Cobh. I'm not sure if he played. You can correct me on this if I'm wrong in a second, anyway. But I think Charlie Fleming was a mainstay in the squad for a few years anyway at Cobh, and obviously he went to Cork City, and he was fairly vocal about how he didn't feel he got a fair crack at it with Cork City. But he has certainly had a stop-start season with Treaty United, obviously of his own doing in some ways, because he was starting with the team until that ridiculous sending off against Cobh in Marks Field, where he was probably too wound up, I'd imagine, for the game. That's certainly the way it seemed to be, and that a very silly headbutt which put more spotlight on him and the Treaty team at the time with the red card count. But he's managed to get back into the team. More so, me and my contributors on the podcast have said probably more so out of luck with the timing because of certain injuries and the fact that Jack Lynch had then had to move from right back to central midfield. But to be fair, he's staying in the side. I suppose, look, it's going to be a game though where Cobh will probably target him over his temperament now. And maybe I noticed Ian Turner played on the left wing. That's certainly something that maybe Cobh might be targeting on Saturday evening.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting, like actually for Charlie Fleming in that sense, because like he's a guy who I'd say he only grew up a couple of minutes away from St. Coleman's
Park. Yeah, you mentioned that last week actually. Yeah,
and I would say like, and I'd imagine a lot of the I think the limited spectators that will be there under the restrictions with the fans that be there, I'd say a good few of them probably would probably know him, or they could pass him on the street and Cobh. And first, so like it'd be an interesting kind of a night for him in that sense, But I would imagine as well, I'd imagine Tommy Barrett as well, after maybe the reverse game as well, he'd be told just to kind of keep the cool, kind of keep the head, like don't get involved in any kind of chit chat, or if any Cobh players or anyone's trying to get under your skin. So, but like he's a good lad, from what I've seen him. He was a good. The fella when he was a Cobh, like he was good, like in terms of going up and down the wing and his effort. So he was a mainstay in the Cobh side for a good number of years, and he even look at Cork City last year as well. He was in at the start of the season, like before COVID and the pandemic brought everything to a halt. He actually looked fairly good. Like I remember, I saw him. I was watching the game against St. Pat's, and he was really like he was bombing up and down the wing, and so he put a great he was putting good crosses into the box, and it was going fairly well for him. And then unfortunately the whole thing kind of came to a shut, and it didn't help Cork City, I suppose, in the whole, really, in the sense, because they were maybe a newish team, and Neil Finn was trying to kind of build from scratch really there, and there was a good number of loan players, so it probably just didn't work out maybe for him and for Cork City and for Fleming in that sense. But I'd say he's definitely a guy who's always been eager to play and to prove himself at League of Ireland level. And I think like I'd say he definitely would see it as a good opportunity as well to kind of to stay in there and to push, keep pushing for the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for Charlie himself to right the wrongs of the game in the Marks Field and obviously prove a point, I suppose, as well. That is one thing I have noticed, to be fair, is that no matter how bad it's going for Charlie Fleming in a game, he does still stick to going up and down the wing, as you said, and tries to support his winger as much as possible. Speaking of, obviously, me and you in the past, John, have spoken at length, obviously, about the fact that there's 4 ex-Limerick FC players playing in the Cobh squad, and you've got, obviously, Lee Devitt is from Clare, very close to Limerick, is where he's living. How has the season been going for Lee so far in the games you've seen? Because I know that at the start of the season he was kind of on the left of a narrow 4 there when in one of the games I saw. But since then I haven't really seen much of Cobh. So how has it been going, I suppose?
Yeah, I think he's really he's been over this season, and definitely like last season as well with COVID, obviously missed out on goal difference in the playoffs. I think Lee Devitt over that period of time, he's probably been one of Cobh's best performers. If I'm being honest with you, really, though the effort he puts in there is great, and maybe you could never fault his work rate, and he's probably been lucky not to kind of get on the score sheet a bit more either, to be honest. Like even going back to last week up in UCD, he had a good chance. Obviously it was saved by Larkin Healy, the UCD keeper, but he's really and he's kind of gone into the middle of the park in the more recent games, because Pierce Phillips has been out for injury, but I think Pierce could be coming back now as well from injury. But he's a reliable operator. I think he's the kind of guy who Stuart Ashton puts him into the team to kind of do a job. More often than not, he will do it. And so I think definitely Cobh fans have definitely taken him down there. And it is a good job. You could see as well, how committed he has been as well, obviously, to be coming up and down as well from from Limerick, the Limerick direction, a couple of nights a week. And I suppose it shows maybe the buy-in that he can see what Cobh are doing, and maybe what Stuart Ashton, whether he's the direction that the club are trying to go in.
Yeah, I know, and actually speaking maybe a brief bit on how both teams will line up. Obviously, Treaty have a kind of a sustained injury list at the moment, but the likes of Conor Melody and Aaron Fitzgerald haven't played at all really for Treaty so far this season. But Clyde O'Connell, Sean McSweeney are 2 players who who probably would be right, but they definitely would be right in a show to start. And now it depends on whether they come back or not, to what formation. I think Time Barrel player Sean McSweeney is there. It could be a 4-2-3-1 formation, but if not, it's more of a tight three he plays there, where he plays a 4-3-3, almost flat with Ed McCarthy there. We were speaking the other night on our other podcast with Noel and Jason O'Connor, and they kind of almost agreed that a pitch in the ilk of St. Colins Park kind of suits Treaty United, in that the way Treaty United defend and how narrow they like to get, and how hard they like to make it in the middle of the pitch. So it will be obviously hard for Cobh to break down. But in saying that as well, John, you've got a striker now in the Hegarty, who's coming into the game high on form after scoring against one of the best sides in the division twice away. So it promises to be a good battle. Do you think actually that Stuart Ashton will play a similar 4-2-3-1, or what way is he likely to line out?
I'd say I would imagine so. Adrian, he probably that's kind of the way he's even home and the way that's kind of generally a lot of the time from watching Cobh. That's kind of the way they kind of generally seem to be kind of lining out, and it's someone like Jake Hegarty would be at the top of the in the attack, and he's been like the last couple of weeks as well. He's kind of, you could see he's out in the Munster Senior League with Middleton in the recent years. He was a port and like a regular scorer, and you could see by my word he's bringing that into the League of Ireland with Ramblers in the last couple of weeks. And I suppose in the first parts of the season as well, just thinking about like Jake, I suppose he had to be kind of a bit patient at the start, because a lot of games he was on the bench for a good number of the first series of games. That was made down to be like Kieran Griffin, who came in, and he had done fairly well up in attack, but then Kieran Griffin got injured, so he was kind of brought into the starting 11, and I suppose they made it to shows as well in terms of the competition for places at Cobh this year as well, that there's a strong competition for places. That there's guys coming in like Hegarty who could do a job, and even at the fullback John Kavanagh as well, who would be one of Cove's, I suppose, in terms of Premier Division experience as well, with the likes of Cork City and Finn Harps and and the like. So to lose a player of him through injury as well, you think maybe that it's a loss. But in fairness to him, James McCarthy has come in recent weeks, and he hasn't looked. It's like Kevin hasn't been misreading, and that's how good James McCarthy has done. In the full back position. So definitely, there's plenty of competition for places there. And you think of guys who haven't even come into the side yet. Caelan Rooney, a guy who was with Ipswich Town underage. And by all accounts, he's been absolutely ripping it up in training. But I think he's just been unfortunate through injury. Injuries kind of held him back from actually kind of getting in. I suppose being fit on match night. So. And Reggie Medic is another guy who I'm really looking forward to seeing when he gets fit. He was down. He's a big kind of strong centre forward, and he was down in Waterford's first team around 2019, and he was scoring from as well. But I think he kind of picked up a bad injury before the start of the season, but I think he's working his way back, and hopefully the next couple of months, Cobh Ramblers fans will see more of him as well. But overall, definitely, Joe, I think in terms of looking at the squad, in terms of competition for places, it's probably as strong as it's been in a good few years down in Cobh, really,
Yeah, and I know that Stuart Ashton was very disappointed with the way his Cobh team played tonight at the Markets Field when Treaty did go down to 10 men. I suppose if he looks at it now, he might be more forgiving with the fact that Treaty have went on and got good results. We're going to put our own heads on the chopping block here, John, and go for a prediction ourselves for the game. What way do you think the game score prediction for Saturday evening?
Honestly, I was just kind of thinking about it earlier. I think it's going to be very hard. Both teams are coming to it and kind of good confidence and in good form as well. It's actually a hard one to call, but if I had to put my neck on the line for it, I'd probably go. I think with the momentum that Cobh had picked up, the fact that they're home, and the fact maybe that there'll be a few spectators in as well. I think that I might just go for a narrow kind of Cobh win, and that they're going to kind of build on that momentum. But I suppose in saying that, I wouldn't be the one bit least surprised if it ended in a draw or he ended with 3 points either. Though it's going to be a very close game, and they're kind of they're two well coached teams. There's two good managers there. and like the squads are kind of similar enough as well in the sense of a lot of guys have Cobh have a good few lads coming in from the likes of the Munster Senior League, similar to a few of the Treaty lads. So I think it will be a close one. Like I'm looking forward to it, and it'll be interesting to see who does come out on top.
Yeah, certainly will be the case. I'd love, because you've said a narrow Cobh win, I'd love to really go against and put the boot in, hope for a 3 win. But to be honest with you, if I was to go with my gut, I do think it might end in a 1-1 draw, or it'll be very tight in that respect. So I'm kind of sitting on the fence now, which wouldn't be like me as such. But I think it might be narrow. And John, if I do manage to get my accreditation for the game, or my pass, I'll be coming over to you if it's a Treaty win straight after the game to say that you were wrong. But obviously, thanks very much, John, for joining us again, and obviously we're delighted to have you on too. And we'd love to have you on again, and we might even have you on again for that 3rd round fixture for Treaty United versus Cobh at the Markets Field. So thanks once again for joining us, John.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adrian, and hopefully for that game there might be both. Maybe if they're both kind of up, maybe competing for the playoff spots. If there's something on the line in that sense, it would really add a bit of spice as well.
Oh, absolutely, it would be great. Thanks everyone for joining us this evening.